As Bob mentioned, my name's Tamara Dzubay, and I'm a clean energy and sustainable business specialist at the Environmental Law and Policy Center, which is headquartered in Chicago. The Environmental Law and Policy Center is known as ELPC, and we're the Midwest's leading public interest environmental organization working to advance clean energy, clean air, clean transportation, and clean water in the Midwest. The Environmental Law and Policy Center is made up of attorneys as well as policy advocates and business specialists that work to create strategic advocacy campaigns around environmental issues to help protect the Midwest's natural heritage. That's just a little bit about what ELPC is, but what I'm here to talk today about is Illinois' clean energy economy, as well as some clean energy and energy efficiency initiatives that we work on at ELPC. And I will conclude today with a discussion of some clean air and clean transportation initiatives, including how you all can access clean energy, become more energy efficient, and really help Illinois advance clean air and clean transportation initiatives. ELPC is going to be releasing a 2017 update to its Illinois Clean Energy Supply Chain Report in September. And in this report, ELPC's findings are that there are more than 450 clean energy companies in Illinois. And there are companies in all 18 congressional districts. Oh, sorry about that. So you can see from this map here that really wind, solar, geothermal, and energy storage companies are all over the state, not just in Chicago. And there are definitely a slew of companies right now. So Illinois is doing a good job in terms of policies and promoting clean energy growth, but the number of companies is really going to be growing exponentially over the next few years because of legislation that was passed last year called the Future Energy Jobs Act. So right now we identified over 200 companies in Illinois that are engaged in the wind industry supply chain, over 290 companies in Illinois engaged in the solar industry supply chain, over 130 companies engaged in the geothermal energy supply chain, and over 75 companies statewide engaged in the energy storage supply chain. When we defined the supply chain, we looked at manufacturers, developers, contractors and installers, and professional service and other essential providers that really support clean energy growth in Illinois. So as I mentioned, what has been enabling this growth so far and what will continue to enable it is favorable state and federal policies. These are essential to promoting investment in the clean energy industries, which then create jobs and economic growth. So ELPC worked with a number of other groups to update Illinois' renewable portfolio standard. And as of last year, the renewable portfolio standard was quote unquote fixed, and it calls for 25% renewable energy generation in Illinois by 2025. By 2025 and all years thereafter. And what really was fixed is that now there is a stable and secure budget for the procurement of renewable energy credits, also known as RECs. And there's now a long-term planning process that will ensure that Illinois can meet this target. And what really is great about the fix in the legislation is that it has new build requirements for wind energy and solar energy. And there are specific carve-outs in the new build requirements for community solar, low-income solar, known as solar for all, and other small-scale distributed generation projects. So Illinois' clean energy economy will grow significantly through this legislation. To give you an idea, right now, Illinois is actually a leader in wind generation, ranking 6th nationally. So right now we have 4,000 megawatts of installed wind capacity. We do not have much solar. Through this legislation and the targets that it creates, by the year 2030, there will be a 33% increase in installed wind capacity and a 4,000% increase in installed solar capacity. So the number of megawatts combined, 4,350 through these targets, is enough to power almost 1 million homes. So the number of companies that we identified in our report, there will definitely be a major influx, by 2030 of companies that are looking to invest in Illinois and grow Illinois' clean energy economy because of this favorable legislation.
What would you say that was and how much demand there is now? What percentage of the power will come from?
25, so it'll be 25% generation is what the renewable portfolio standard calls for. And one item that's really interesting about this legislation is that in these new build targets, 50% of the renewable energy credits must come from smaller scale projects, which include rooftop solar and now for the first time, community solar. So community solar is like a community garden. Except with community solar, you can have businesses, individuals that are homeowners, as well as individuals that rent, and community groups, and even the government participate in the same solar installation. And the reason that community solar is so important is because it allows renters and folks that have shaded roofs or don't have good roofs for rooftop solar access to clean energy. There will be opportunities in Illinois to host community solar developments. Anchor means that usually to get financing, there needs to be one of these subscribers needs to subscribe for 40% of the installation. So that's what anchor means. And subscribe to actually purchase your energy from the community solar project. And the way that it will work with your electricity bill is that you'll get a credit on your bill for the amount that your subscription or your panel as part of this project produces. And Illinois is definitely growing this significantly. There will be 400 megawatts required through the legislation of just community solar projects, which is enough to power tens of thousands of homes. And the process for this, I'm told, is likely supposed to start in the first half of 2018. So a lot of this was described in the legislation and is currently being worked out through the Illinois Power Agency and the Illinois Commerce Commission. So really over the next year, there will be a lot more details solidified, but community solar is a great step for Illinois. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oops.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah.
Renewables all throughout the state, but if it's only tens of thousands of homes, it seems like that might get concentrated in Chicago or something, or is that
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. It's, everyone has access to the projects. What is essential is that the anchor comes for the financing, so that will probably be like a business or a larger community group. And when the subscribers come together, it's the communities and probably led by municipalities and smaller communities in the state will really be the ones that will drive that forward. But by no means is it meant to just be like in Chicago. That's the minimum required, that at least this much of the renewable energy credits has to come from these types of projects. Chicago will have some because there are a lot of renters there, so that's a way also for residents to access the projects. But hopefully we see that communities statewide participate and come together to really grow the clean energy economy through these projects.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'm going to switch gears a little now and talk about another initiative at ELPC, which is advancing energy efficiency initiatives throughout the Midwest. It's really interesting what has happened with the electricity markets. If you see from this slide, this graph is showing that the past 7 years, there's been a divergence between electricity sales and the number of electricity companies or customers. As the number of electricity customers has been increasing over the past 7 years, electricity sales have been decreasing. Very, very interesting development, and it just shows how much the electricity market is changing. And one of the main drivers for this is energy efficiency. So you're probably thinking, well, how do I save money on my energy bills, and how can I help conserve? And the top 3 ways that you can take action now to become more energy efficient and save on your bills and also help reduce pollution are to, when your appliances need to be replaced, to purchase Energy Star certified appliances and equipment. Since 2007, there have been product standards that have been aggressively adopted at the federal level that are projected to save customers over $550 billion nationwide in energy costs by 2030. So Energy Star appliances, Energy Star certification just means that this is, the government has certified that this is an energy efficient appliance. The second is through LED lighting. The number one wasteful energy usage studies have found is lighting, and the best way to conserve energy through lighting is to use LEDs. LEDs alone are projected to reduce nationwide lighting consumption by 40% by 2030. So they really are highly efficient, and now they're available for lots of different types of lights. And if you haven't already, I definitely encourage you to see what your utility incentives are for energy efficiency. Utilities through like ComEd, through their energy efficiency programs, they're mandated to provide rebates and discounts to advance energy efficiency. And LEDs and other appliances like smart thermostats, which are the third way that you can really save by not heating or cooling empty rooms in your house. So I guess how many of you here know what a smart thermostat is? Okay, so a lot of people. For those of you that don't, smart thermostats are Wi-Fi enabled devices that allow you to control your heating and cooling remotely, and they help save you energy by also detecting whether you are actually in your house or if your house is vacant. So when you purchase a smart thermostat, you can put home settings and away settings. And part of the way to really get the most savings out of this technology is to make sure that you have appropriate set points for when you are not home. So it's typically advised that, in the summer, if you're not home, your away setting should be 10 degrees cooler than what it is when whatever your comfort level is inside your house. And in the winter, for heating, for it to be 10 degrees cooler, or the other way around, 10 degrees warmer in the summer and 10 degrees cooler in the winter to really maximize the savings that you get. So smart thermostats have been shown to save 12 to 23% on energy bills annually. And also, just in addition to the tip on smart thermostats, obviously, if you're not home, you definitely want to be turning off your lights and appliances. And with lighting being the number one energy waste category, the second is heating and cooling your home. So just the steps of using LEDs and getting a smart thermostat really could help you save on your bills. So smart thermostats are more expensive, but one of ELPC's main initiatives after it was discovered that the second way folks are wasting energy next to lighting is through heating and cooling empty spaces, has been to work with utilities in Illinois to create a smart thermostat rebate program. So right now, ComEd actually has the largest smart thermostat rebate program in the nation. I don't know how many of you are ComEd customers. A few. So ComEd rebates smart thermostats by $100 as an instant discount on their website, which is just comedmarketplace.com. And then gas utilities in Northern Illinois, specifically Nicor Gas and North Shore Gas and Peoples Gas, offer $50 mail-in rebates so that the combined discount for a smart thermostat is $150. Yeah, $150 off, which is significant savings, over a 50% discount of the purchase price. And they've been shown to pay for themselves in a really short time period. Again, but that does depend on your correct set points and temperature settings. So ELPC worked with a group of other stakeholders to conceive of the Million Smart Thermostat program. And really the goal of the program is to install over 1 million smart thermostats in Northern Illinois homes over the next 5 years. So ComEd has adopted, this is an aggressive goal, and so far they're ramping up, but a lot of it is just, letting people know that this rebate exists. And now, at least for the ComEd side, it's actually an instant discount. It's not anything you have to mail in. There's nothing that you need to do. So there are about 8 manufacturers right now that produce these smart thermostats that are eligible for the rebates. And our website has a list of this information if you're interested. I also have some fact sheets on community solar and smart thermostats up here that we can pass around if it's helpful.
Could you give your website?
Absolutely. It's www.elpc.org. Does anyone have any questions? Yep.
Can you tell us why Wi-Fi makes these so much more desirable?
I think it's because of the ability to control it remotely. So like with programmable thermostats, a lot of times people forget to program it, or the way they programmed it, they want to change it. And so it doesn't really pick up the savings the same way that smart thermostats do, because smart thermostats actually can detect whether you're in the house. Like even if you forgot to change the setting or didn't do it on a smartphone, most of the technologies can actually tell whether your home is vacant, and then it just automatically changes the temperature level. So that's what enables it. But for homes that don't have Wi-Fi, programmable thermostats are definitely also a great option, and they are lower cost. But again, they don't offer that ability to control this remotely when you're not at home. Did you have a question?
I don't know if you were going to get to this, and I'm sorry to kind of ask in the middle, but one of the things that I was wondering about, Illinois, especially some of the smaller, more rural communities, have their own electric companies, like Rock Falls, they have their own electric and water, and they're all put together, so does Freeport. What are some of the are there any kind of general rules, or did deregulation change this where they all can kind of come up, create their own energy policies and prices and policies? I noticed ComEd seems to be able to do a lot more, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out, is there any kind of, I guess, uniformity when it comes to power companies in Illinois?
And you mean in terms of like rebates and incentives?
Things like that. Well,
yeah.
Things as nature of when like people are gonna need like budget, let's say reconnection assistance or payment arrangements. It seems like ComEd tends to be a lot more liberal and generous with it, whereas some of these smaller ones in smaller areas, they're not. So it's just, I'm trying to just understand, why is there this divergence within power companies within the state?
Yeah, it's definitely because the regulated utilities have to do this and the unregulated ones don't. So there were, through the new legislation, there were also aggressive energy efficiency targets, and those were for ComEd and Ameren, and that's just because they're regulated utilities. So yeah, access to energy efficiency rebates and incentives may not be available at those deregulated utilities, but definitely still, still doing things like purchasing LEDs. The prices have dropped significantly on those. Those are definitely much more of a cost-effective saving strategy. And just, even shutting off your air when you leave if you have a manual thermostat, just not wasting energy in the way that you don't have your lights on or your air blowing when no one's home. And studies have found that actually a lot of people do, and it's the number one way to really save money and help reduce pollution.
There's about 40 municipalities in Illinois that have their own power plants. They make their own rules.
So because of deregulation?
No, they existed before deregulation.
So they existed before, but they were not required to be regulated.
Right. Yeah. And they make their own rules.
Right, well, yeah, that's quite apparent.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to switch gears again and now talk a little bit about some clean air and clean transportation initiatives that we are working on in Illinois, as well as throughout the Midwest. So how many of you are familiar with the Volkswagen defeat device scandal? A good number. Okay, so for those that aren't, I'll just give a quick summary. Volkswagen violated the Clean Air Act by selling almost 600,000 diesel cars. The model years were 2009 to 2016, with defeat devices that were designed to cheat on federal emissions tests. These vehicles violated the emissions rules by 40 times and resulted in excess nitrogen oxide, NOx emissions of more than 40,000 tons. So when this was discovered, the US Environmental Protection Agency and others sued Volkswagen, and the result of these lawsuits were several different settlements. The settlement that I'm going to talk a little bit about is the state-administered settlement, because that's the way that the public can really get involved to provide input on how Illinois should use some of the funds that it's going to be receiving to mitigate diesel pollution in Illinois. So every state is receiving a different amount based on the number of cars sold with these defeat devices. In Illinois, that amount is $108 million. So it's a significant amount of money that the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency will be overseeing how this money is spent. The money needs to go towards air pollution mitigation projects. And the settlement allows for only 10 eligible uses of funds. So there are 3 different technologies that the settlement allows for within those 10 uses of funds. The 10 uses of funds are school buses, shuttle buses, and transit buses as one category. An electric vehicle infrastructure, but that amount is actually capped that it can't, more than 15% can't be spent towards electric vehicle infrastructure. Local freight trucks, local larger freight trucks, freight switchers, usually at intermodal facilities, airport ground support equipment, like the equipment that is outside driving between planes, and forklifts, as well as some categories that are less relevant for Illinois, like ocean-going vessels and ferries and tugs. But looking at these uses, we realized if you come up with criteria, like ELPC found a set of 4 criteria that we think is really important for state agencies to use when they're evaluating how this money should be spent. And the criteria that we came up with was, well, the settlement's meant to reduce pollution, so it should definitely result in opportunities to provide NOx reduction, but also the agencies should take into consideration how this is affecting people and how it's affecting vulnerable people. So that would be the human risk and exposure reduction. And then cost effectiveness, so that we're not just wasting money, but also looking at cost effectiveness over the full vehicle life cycle. Electric vehicles, for example, have higher purchase prices, but operations and maintenance costs are lower. So we came down for an electric school bus to the point that it would be cost competitive with a conventional school bus. That could really have a major impact on kids. And kids are actually among the most vulnerable to diesel pollution. A study through the University of Michigan and the University of Wisconsin found that kids are actually most exposed to diesel pollution while riding on school buses. So it's ironic because, you know, we want to get kids to school safely, but on old diesel buses, these pollutants are exacerbating, and the study found in cases even helping to, what's the word I'm looking for? Helping to cause asthma in kids. So diesel school bus tailpipe emissions include pollutants, which are NOx and particulate matter, PM 2.5, and these bring on asthma attacks. School buses, not only are kids exposed while they're riding on the bus themselves, but school buses on average make 85 stops a day. So the idling of the bus stopping further exposes kids to this pollution. Asthma is actually the #1 most common chronic condition among children in the United States, 1 in 10 kids have asthma, and in urban centers, some rates are as high as 1 in 2. So it's really a significant problem. And asthma attacks lead to unnecessary hospitalizations and even deaths. And this can be prevented through proper education, medication, and most importantly, reduced exposure. So there are over 675,000 school buses in the US, and we felt that this is a really high impact opportunity for states to lead the charge to help bring cleaner school buses to all communities. So the Environmental Law and Policy Center launched an electric school bus Midwest road tour in June with the goal of raising awareness about the Volkswagen Settlement, especially about the specific opportunity to get electric school buses on the road that don't expose children to these tailpipe emissions and harmful diesel pollution. The tour was specifically timed because over the next few months, state agencies across the US will be crafting proposals on how to use the money that they're receiving from the settlement. So we started in Illinois and Chicago, then went to Indianapolis, and then to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where there was the State Student Transportation Conference. And then we went to Lansing, Michigan, where there was Michigan State Student Transportation Conference, and then to Ann Arbor, and ended the tour in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio has a Smart City grant where they are electrifying fleets over the next few years with this money. And if I wasn't clear, so we actually took an electric school bus on the road with us and did press conferences with environmental speakers, public health speakers, even utilities and school officials to talk about why this is such an important opportunity for all of these Midwest states. And we learned on the tour that the people that are driving these buses, the school transportation officials, had really positive experiences driving these buses. They were really quiet. They said they would probably keep kids quieter while they're riding. And the kids, as you can see from this picture, just thought it was the coolest thing. So Illinois specifically is going to be soliciting public input very soon on how it should use this money. This individual is actually who's accepting comments. And I encourage all of you, whether it's school buses or something else that you think is important, to get involved and let the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency know what you think should be prioritized. That concludes my presentation for today, but if you have any questions, you can email me. This is my email address, and then that's ELPC's website. Yes?
Are electric school buses commercially available today?
They are. That's a great question. There are over 100 on the road right now. They're being manufactured right now by a company called Lion Bus and another company called TransTech. However, one of the largest school bus manufacturers in the United States is called Bluebird, and they are currently developing an electric school bus. And one thing that I didn't talk about, but that's really interesting in how this becomes cost effective for school districts, is that the buses only operate when they're driving kids to school and driving them back home. So the times that the bus can sit without anyone needing to go anywhere is during peak demand times of the day. So this Bluebird is developing an electric school bus with vehicle-to-grid technology where school districts could theoretically plug the bus in and sell electricity back to the grid to make money. So if rates are structured in a way at the utility that the buses are incentivized to charge at night when there's not a lot of demand on the grid, and prices are low, then it's really like peak shaving and a revenue generating opportunity potentially for school districts. So there are utilities across the country that are piloting that exactly. There's a 20-bus electric school bus pilot in New York through Con Ed that will ramp up to 250 electric school buses. There is a pilot of 4 electric school buses currently in Massachusetts. There's, of course, pilots in California because California leads on everything environmental. But our goal is really to get this model to Midwest utilities. For the bus that we went on the tour with, the range was 100 miles. So enough for most districts that you would just need to charge overnight.
Can you explain a little more about peak shaving?
Sure. So the bus, if it's not plugging in the middle of the day, so the bus doesn't run in the middle of the day, which is peak demand times, and the bus also doesn't run in the summer months, which is peak demand season. And so for this vehicle-to-grid technology, once it gets worked out, it would allow school districts or whoever owns the buses to be plugging in the evening when electricity prices are low because it's non-peak time. So if they're plugging in when it's low and then they're able to plug in the middle of the day and that gets worked out that the vehicle-to-grid revenue could happen, that's a time where the prices are high because everyone's plugging in the middle of the day or in the summer because you're running your AC and all of that. So that's really what the pilots right now are testing is how does this technology work? Does it work? How do we get this to scale? And the Department of Energy has partnered with Bluebird, which is, again, one of the largest school bus manufacturers in the U.S., and it's a domestic manufacturer, to really hone in on this technology and find a way that to make this work. So those buses, the Bluebird electric school buses, should be available in 2018.
So they'd be used for energy storage.
Right, yeah. So utilities are interested in demand response, the batteries, using the batteries for a second and third life, the vehicle-to-grid capabilities, how that relates to smart grid initiatives. So there are a lot of, no one would ever think that a utility would own a school bus, right? It has like the last thing you would think that was part of a utility portfolio, but it's really interesting to hear that some of the progressive utilities in the United States are actually doing just that. So in New York, the New York utility Con Ed did a cost sharing program with school districts where they put up a third of the cost of the bus for rights to actually test the technology over the summer months.
What is the cost of the bus?
It's about 3 times as much. So it's significant right now, but it's just like with any new technology, like when desktop computers started, they were so much more expensive that getting more of them out there, and 80% of the cost around that amount is for the battery, and battery prices are projected to decline significantly over the next decade. So as those come down, that will help with the price. As they're manufactured at scale, that will help with the price. So why we see the VW opportunity as a good one is it could help jumpstart the market to drive costs down. So the ultimate aspirational goal is let's get these buses to be cost competitive, whether that's through vehicle-to-grid revenue or like cost parity with conventional buses. Yeah? Oh, yeah.
This is there's something though comparison between a gasoline fuel bus, a diesel bus, and an electric bus. That the latter two have difficulty on a steep slope, putting their brakes on or slowing down, or isn't there some difficulty with electric buses?
Actually, there are savings through regenerative braking with electric school buses. I'm, to be honest, not an expert on this, but we hosted a webinar in March where folks that are really familiar with the technology and the operation and maintenance costs spoke, and they spoke about just that. So that is on our website under clean transportation. Yes?
If the buses go out in the morning and then
things you can merge work together. So 20 or 50 buses are sitting somewhere, have a huge charging station.
Right, exactly.
Everything's off the grid.
Exactly. Right, and I mean, the ideal is, right, to do like solar powered charging stations, or the ultimate goal is just decarbonization of the grid. Yes.
It seems to me that a lot of the renewable standards are kind of smoke and mirrors. I get a thing in the mail that says that if I pay this much more, my energy will be from renewable fuels, and it's really going to just be somebody's credit. It's not going to be a renewable.
Yeah, so so I have a slide because renewable energy credits are a little confusing. The way that they work is you can't really claim that you have green power without renewable energy credits. So like a generator sells power and then they actually sell the renewable energy credit. So if you purchase the credit, you're purchasing what is clean energy. The reason that it's done this way is because, especially when the market for clean energy started, is it's more expensive. And the RECs, the purchase of the RECs, incentivize renewable energy development because structuring it this way, it's almost like a production subsidy for the renewable energy generator. So that's how in Illinois with the new legislation, everything is through renewable energy credits.
That was a problem for a while because ComEd was buying those credits out of Iowa and not putting in the wind that we could have had. So they were buying the credits from Iowa rather than installing systems. But that's been changed now. So that should not be a problem. They're being required to install this.
The wind farms here locally and regionally are included?
I don't quite understand.
Well, you said that they were just getting the credits from Iowa and not counting the wind.
They were getting credit as if they had installed wind by buying the credits out of Iowa. They did install some wind, but it slowed down the amount of wind that they bought, and now that's been corrected in the new legislation. And one other thing I just have to say, because I've known it for years. 2025, how that came about. Hans Detweiler and I, when he was with the Commerce Commission, were talking, and he said, well, I think we should go for 15% renewables or something like that, Sam. And I said, by 2025. I said, no, make it simple, 25 by 25. So I did it.
Congrats. Yes.
A comment about LED lights. I saw a lecture, maybe some people saw it on PBS about 2 or 3 months ago. This professor, I think she was from Madison, claimed that since LED lights have been introduced, electricity use for lighting hasn't gone down, it's gone up. She called it some paradox. It was named after a man back in the 1800s that realized that as coal efficiency, the burning of coal became more efficient, coal use didn't go down, it went up. And her claim is that it's for 2 main reasons. I hear this all the time from people. They have an LED light, they'll say, uses such little energy, I just leave it on. And the other point is, there are so many more uses now for LED lights. Toys, decorations of different types of people are using more electricity for lighting because of that.
I'm not familiar with that. I would be really interested to see it. I definitely think, still even with LEDs, you definitely want to be turning your lights off when you're not at home. But it's my understanding that, LEDs are really revolutionizing the lighting market by reducing lighting waste. But yeah, I would be happy to look into that further.
Yeah, WTP out of Madison, I
That's
think
called Jadon principle. Jadon.
That's it, yeah.
He's the guy who figured that out. And you're right on waste. There's a page, I'm forgetting the website's name. It's the one it's It's low tech. I think that's what it is, low technology. He's got pictures of the buildings covered with LEDs that advertise the companies. So there is some offset there. But when you look at the overall trend, the efficiency has brought down demand. So it is an effective concept, but it does have some limitations.
Yep.
So we sort of touched on that all these independent electric companies, be they co-ops, be they just owned by the municipality, however they're set up, none of them are regulated by the Commerce Commission for solar collectors and making sure they have a program where people instead of solar collectors get credit as well. I'm sorry.
She asked you to repeat the question.
No, you were,
Oh, can I repeat it? Oh, the question was unregulated utilities, like co-ops, are they bound by rules through the Illinois Commerce Commission? To be honest, I believe unregulated utilities are not. Bob might know more about this than I do.
The unregulated, the community ones, the municipal power, there's 42 of them, and talking with the guy that coordinates that office in Springfield, they're limited to like 40 megawatts of production capacity. So they have their limits, but they're dependent on their customers in that service territory. So they're concerned about how do we figure this out economically if we lose customers, kind of thing. But Joe Carroll, which had been resistant to renewables, has gotten active in renewables. And they did a community solar project, and they found that they weren't able to sell that many to individuals. They didn't get the buy-in they thought. So then they turned around and they proposed they put it on their municipal buildings in, I think, their sewage treatment plant. So that's another area of big opportunity, that all of these government units are using electricity, and here is an opportunity to solarize those buildings. And one way of doing it, this is a little controversial, is that you get third-party financing. And if you got somebody in the community with a big debt that steps forward, they can use all the federal tax credits and get the depreciation. That lowers the cost of the installation for the municipality, so they don't have to raise money to install it. Then the contract is written so they pay somewhat less than the utility price, and then after 5 years, the third party has milked all the benefits from it, and so they can sell it back to the municipality. And so that's one way of getting around some of these burdens that are in place.
Bob, expanding on that, is there any sort of municipality that finances the individual in kind of that way? Like possibly through a utility bill or a water bill or something like that?
The one that I know that is actually helping people go off grid is Vermont and Green Mountain Energy. They have decided that, you know, stringing those wires out and maintaining them in the small individual homes and communities is an expensive proposition. So they're actually helping people go off grid. And they're installing power walls for the off-grid people. So there's a few of them. I don't really keep up with it all that much. The speaker we had from Minnesota, I'm forgetting the name of that organization, he pushes solar democracy, and he keeps track of these opportunities for the community to become energy secure, energy independent, and retain money in the community that normally goes out for energy bills. And if my geriatric brain remembers in a couple of minutes, I'll shout out the name before I lose it.
So why would net metering be a costly thing for a co-op? That would be the same thing that, in fact, they
No, that one's, yeah, the 40 megawatts, I'm not sure how it will affect that. Maybe.
Well, I think with net metering, so net metering, like behind the meter solar and storage, reduce peak demand. So that's like reduced revenue for the utilities.
Well, it shouldn't from what they buy it for. Peak demand, they generally pay for peak demand and we buy it off the network. Right, the utility does. The utilities costs are somewhat hit on how much their total demand is on the grid. The higher their demand. In fact, Southwestern is selling generators on some kind of deal to customers. And the idea is that they'll turn those generators on for that area when peak demand's on, because it's cheaper for them to have all these generators out there than it is to buy it off the grid.
Interesting.
The only reason I asked is I had a friend that wanted to put a solar collector on Southwestern, and he knew the people that were in charge here and talked to him, and they sent him a legal document about that thicket saying this is what you have to do in order to put solar on.
Oh, okay, that's
So
really
it's a large part
interesting.
of Illinois that can't get solar because the electric companies
Won't
won't.
do net metering or interconnection. No, that's definitely true. I mean, net metering, other policies that I didn't talk about, but like net metering and interconnection standards are really important to make it economical. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Oh.